Hi everyone, my name is Dhruv and I am actually working on my own startup. It's called Product Planet. So I basically want to walk you guys through how I transitioned from VanillaJS, so HTML, CSS, JavaScript to Vue, and maybe that can help some of you who are planning to do something similar in this respect. So just quickly start here. Yeah, so Product Planet is an upskilling platform, and it was only focused on designers at the start. So what it is basically you can learn courses like UI design, UX design, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React, Node, all of these things. And I had started with HTML, CSS, JavaScript, jQuery for the front end, and Express with EJS for the back end. So that was the first version of the website. So there were some issues that I had with that version, and some of them were, it was really difficult to maintain. So I had like a lot of code duplication, and it was basically just, I'll get to why components are really useful, but it was just a lot of the same kind of code. So if you guys know about the principle, don't repeat yourself, like that was exactly what I was doing. I mean, I was repeating myself all over the place, and it was a big mess. I was really slow at prototyping, because everything, the time that it took me for an idea to be implemented was too long. So that is something that you can't afford at a startup. You need to, whatever you have in your head, you need to have it on there, like on your website or app or whatever, very quickly. So that is very important. And the last thing, bad UX. So again, all of these things, you may not encounter them. You can implement a lot of these things in JavaScript also. There is no reason to only use Vue or React for this, but because of a certain structure that Vue provides and React provide, these things kind of get taken care of, which is what I want to get into. So yeah, so Vue came as a as a superhero for me, and I'll show you guys how. So here's the demo. Quickly. Oh, is this? 1 second. I'll just make it bigger. I think this works. Yeah, cool. Yeah, so this was the original version. I'll just quickly log in and show you the flow that I had initially. So this was with the HTML, CSS, JavaScript, VanillaJS basically. Yes, things were taking, actually there's a lot of responsive issues also, but yeah, so if you guys notice that loader, like things, that's one thing. I'll just quickly go here. So what it was is, it was basically through design challenges. This is not even working. Through design challenges, you can apply to companies, and if not that, you can just take design challenges and participate in the community and get upvotes and things like that. So this was basically the flow. Now you can go here and yeah, just quickly go back. This is the original version. Now I'll get to the version with Vue. This took me actually not a lot of time to implement. I mean, just maybe a month or so, and there were a lot of revisions. So a lot of features changed, a lot of features got removed, new features got added, things like that, very quickly. So I'll just sign up here quickly. Yeah, so far it's nothing that has changed. Let's just, yeah, so as you must have noticed, like things are really interactive and very, very snappy, very quick. That is the biggest advantage, in my opinion, that frameworks provide. Frameworks like Vue and React, and it's a lot better UX. The structure is much better, and you're kind of forced to write good code. which is very important also, because if you're just developing things and sometimes you go astray and you just there's a lot of duplication. There's just a lot of the folder structure is not that good, but React and Vue technologies like these, they actually get you that. Sorry. They kind of get you that structure, which is really important to create a interactive, quick app with really good UX. So that was. Do you want me to show you guys like a little more, or does this make sense? Make sense? Good. Cool. Just go back to the presentation. Okay. One sec. Yeah, so advantages, as I've mentioned, many of them already. Very quick prototyping using these frameworks, especially Vue even more than React, because I thought that Vue was less intimidating. I didn't know React either when I started with Vue. I didn't know React or Vue, but I found React to be a little intimidating compared to Vue. The development time reduced drastically. So if I would spend, let's say, 4 hours developing a feature with VanillaJS, I spent only 1 hour doing that in Vue. And that has carried on. It's been about 4 months since I've launched. So it's carried on, and every single new feature that I want to implement, new vertical of my product, it's a lot quicker. VDOM and Vue-router improve performance and UX. Now, these things again can be obtained with just JavaScript also, but Vue makes it very easy because Vue-router is a first-class citizen. It comes with Vue, so you don't have to kind of implement your own routing, and because of client-side routing, things just appear a lot snappy, and the UX is a lot better. That's what I showed with the interactions when I was clicking on certain like routes and certain cards. You guys must have seen that it was pretty quick, almost instant. So that's what Vue-router gives you. It's easier to debug and maintain. And lastly, the folder structure is very clear and very clean. If you guys go with server-side rendering in Nuxt, they have a defined folder structure, which you should also look into if you're implementing an app like this, for your company, or it's slightly on a bigger scale. You should look into server-side rendering from day one. Now, the folder structure, I can quickly show that. Just go to. Yes, I think. Yeah, the speakers before me, they mentioned folder structure briefly, I think, but here what's really interesting is so I've the thinking that I've gone with is views and components. They're both basically components, but there is this idea of presentational components and container components. So presentational components are basically you just use them. They don't do a lot of things. They don't get data. They don't do a lot of things with data. They're kind of dumb components. That's how you can think about them. Container components are your full-fledged component that in turn uses other components. So I thought of them as views. So I've gone with views and components. They're both basically components, but views you can think of also as pages. Like an about page will be a view component, but the about page will have a navbar component, will have a footer component. So those will be in the components. That's how I've done it. There's no right or wrong answer to this, but there are a couple of really good articles on Medium. One by Dan Abramov that you can read. So that also talks about folder structure, but don't go too crazy on this. Yeah, the other stuff, lessons, is just something that is pertaining to my product. I don't. Yeah, so you can create other folders. Services is Firebase. I've put it there. So I'm using Firebase and Mixpanel. So I've put that in services. So that is again like clear. Services basically just helps me in each of my container components to do stuff, either get data or do something with data. So I'm using it here, if you can see. Right. What else? Assets. Yeah, that's pretty self-explanatory, right? Cool. Okay, I'll just go back to the presentation. Right. So it's important to talk about the shortcomings also. So this is some things that I thought with Vue, but mostly mistakes that I've made. which would help some of you, right? I mean, if you're looking into doing something similar, maybe a hobby project or in your company, you can look at some of these things and not do them. So the first one is SEO. I didn't think about SEO from day one. That is a very important aspect of developing an app like this. So basically, frameworks like React and Vue uh, are not the best in terms of SEO. So you need to think about that from day one. The way to handle this is SSR, server-side rendering, which is what I mentioned that some time back. You can do that through Nuxt in Vue, and I think React has Next or something very similar. But you need to think about SSR from day one if you're concerned about SEO. I have used pre-rendering, which is also something similar to SSR, but I've used a library for that, and that is working fine for me so far. But once the app gets bigger and I want to leverage SEO a lot more, I think I'm going to move to SSR. One thing with SSR is that they have a defined. One thing with Nuxt, using Nuxt for SSR is they have a very defined directory structure. So you kind of can't implement your own directory structure. You have to go with whatever they give you. So that is the only, I think, drawback to going with Nuxt, but it's not a big one at all. I mean, that's totally fine. The second thing is components could be cleaner with more planning. Yeah, so it's basically components are there to help you write better code and to kind of break your architecture into a very modular architecture. But there were times when I made a component do more than one thing. So that is something that I should have thought about better. So when you're creating your app, spend more time thinking clearly about the architecture and what component should do what. So that is again something where having the container or views folder and having a components folder, some kind of a structure like that can help you. Third, again, unit testing is super critical here. So unit testing with Jest is very popular for Vue and even React. You should think about unit testing right from the start. I started with that much later. It's very important to test every single component because you encounter a lot of bugs that later just take longer time to fix. Yeah, might have to do some extra work. So this is something that I noticed in Vue. Not every library that exists in React exists in Vue. Like as in, so if there is a library in JavaScript that is doing something, there is a big chance that you're going to have a React library that is doing like a wrapper for that. You are most likely going to have a Vue library for that also, but there is a chance that you may not. Like some libraries are only in React and JavaScript and not in Vue because Vue is newer. So that is one thing where maybe in time I think they should solve for that also. But as of today, sometimes you do encounter such scenarios. And lastly, yeah, thanks. So if you're making a decision like this, what library to go with, what framework to go with, I would say that for me, the number one thing is whether you're making a mobile app or not. So if you're making a mobile app, for me, it's React Native, right? Vue Native is very new. You can, kind of create an app with Vue Native and with some other libraries in Vue, but I would say go with React Native for that. Second, yeah, so you've looked at React Angular. This is where I was, and I really want to stress on this that React wasn't very welcoming from the start. Just many things, about it didn't seem very kind of intuitive and very natural. Vue seemed very easy for me to kind of get started because again, the syntax is close to HTML. That's one reason. There are many other reasons also, but this is something where I feel if you've developed in Vue for let's say about 3 to 4 months at least, and you've developed in React, you will get what I'm trying to say here. And the last one, yeah, I mean, Vue is newer, so if you have some freedom, let's say you're a manager, wherever you're working, they've given you some freedom, experiment or whatever, and try something new. I'm fine with that. If you have a scenario like that, definitely go with Vue. Otherwise, React is right now, maybe a little more kind of accepted. They have a bigger community, although Vue does have more GitHub stars, and Vue is growing faster, I think. So I would say, Vue is awesome. Just think about these three things. Number two is a solid reason for using Vue. The first one, I think, is a good reason for using React Native. And again, 3 is a good reason for using Vue. So yeah, go with the Vue. That's all I want to say. I'm done.